Are you all seeing the PowerPoint slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We'll get started in just a minute here.
It looks like there are a few people in the Teams meeting. There's about 23 people in there. So I did put it in the chat that it's going to be on Zoom. So I think we'll give it a few minutes.
Thanks, Carla.
Yeah, let those people jump in. I think we can go ahead and get started. I haven't seen anybody new pop in. Does that sound okay to the team? Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Carla Estrada. I am the ARPA Grants Coordinator. With me here are some of the Health Department team members. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, most of you know me. My name is Fran Babro on the ACHD Behavioral Health Team account. I am on the Mental Health and Behavioral Health team with Emma and Natalie, and we're seeing a lot of the ARPA funding that we are going to be talking about today.
Okay, can we go to the first slide? So today we are going to provide a very high-level overview of this co-responder opportunity. We're going to start talking about federal grant reporting, what it means to receive this award. We're hoping that this helps you determine if it's something that you want to apply for and the reporting requirements that will come with the award if it's awarded to you. And then we'll go into how to apply on eCivis. We're going to review our county goals and our funding priorities. We're going to give you some examples of services for each of those priorities. And then at the very end, we'll review our frequently asked questions and we'll go over any questions that any of you might have. Okay, so first we're going to get into those strings that come with federal requirements. So this is state and local fiscal recovery funds, American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So with that, can we go to the next one? So uniform guidance, that is the umbrella that governs our rules and regulations with these dollars. It is the less stringent of the ones you see below. So the uniform guidance will inform the final rule, and then the final rule informs the agreement that we would have with you as our subrecipient once you're awarded. Now we're going to go over both allowable expenses, reasonable expenses, and then finally unallowable expenses. So some of the allowable expenses here, they have to be necessary and reasonable for the performance of federal awards. They have to conform to any limitations or exclusions set forth in the federal awards. They have to be consistent with your policies, and in that drop down that we saw, they have to be consistent with not only your own policies, but with the agreement, with the final rule, and then under 2 CFR 200. They have to be accorded consistent treatment in like circumstances. So you treat one the same as you would treat everything else, follow generally accepted accounting principles, not be used to meet cost sharing or matching of another federal award, be adequately documented and incurred within the approved budget period. And then costs not specifically prohibited by federal regulations or the specific grant or contract. So those would be allowable. In the next slide, we have our reasonable expenses. So to be reasonable, a cost must be ordinary and necessary for the operation or efficient performance of the award. Follow sound business and best practices, follow market price for comparable goods and services, administered with prudence with regards to responsibilities, and just significantly deviate from practices and policies. So that is all to say, costs that reflect what a prudent person would pay would be considered reasonable. In the next slide, we have unallowable expenses. And so per uniform guidance, this would be alcoholic beverages, contributions or donations, can't be used for any fines or
Carly, you're a little bit quiet.
Oh. Is that any better with the microphone closer to my?
A little bit.
A little bit, maybe I'll just speak a little bit louder. Yeah, feel free to interrupt me though, Fran, if it does get talked again. And then also unallowable debt service or replenishing financial reserves, settlements, and any program or service or capital expense that undermine the effort to stop the spread of COVID-19. So these are all very high level, but I would also say straightforward, right? So no alcoholic beverages, no cannabis, no anything that might fall under those categories. Next slide, please. Another thing that we really want to be able to talk to you guys about, and what comes with these federal funds, are additional reporting requirements set by the U.S. Treasury Department. So when you are awarded an ARPA grant, you will fall into one of these expenditure categories. More than likely, you will be in expenditure category 2 or in number 1, supports public health expenditures and addresses negative economic impacts to households and small businesses. Next slide, please, Fran. So this is a very long list, and it is not all of the expenditure categories that we have. And this is all to say that if you fall into one of these and not the other, your reporting requirements will be different. So even though you might all be co-responder subrecipients, your expenditure categories will determine the additional reporting requirements that we have to do for the U.S. Treasury Department. Just to call out some of them that might fit here, it might be under 1.12, mental health services. We might be looking at 2.2, housing assistance, rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, just as some examples. And in that next slide is 2 examples of those additional reporting requirements. Most of you will fall under expenditure categories that require one of these 2. So we have to be able to say, is your project or program evidence-based? What kind of evidence are we using here? And then mandatory performance indicators and programmatic data. So again, specific questions that we will go over in detail once you're awarded. We just want to let you know what comes with receiving these funds. Next slide, please. So according to the final rule, these are some of our key principles and guidelines. So Funds are to respond to pandemic needs and support families and businesses struggling with health and economic impacts, maintain vital public services, build a strong, resilient, and equitable recovery by making investments that support long-term growth and opportunity. The caveat here is that we have to refer to your agreement for the use of funds for the performance dates and for milestones. So your agreement will have your scope of work in it. So the funds have to be used to address that scope of work. They have to be within the performance days, and you have to meet those milestones. Programs designated to reduce the impact should be related and reasonably proportional to the harm identified and reasonably designated to benefit those impacted for eligible use only. And then some equity considerations. Funds are tied to serving underserved and disproportionately impacted communities and businesses affected by the pandemic. So we also have to be able to report and say these are the underserved or the disproportionately impacted communities that we are serving, and be able to provide some usage numbers for that. Next one, please. And so those were reporting requirements set by the U.S. Treasury Department and your specific project and expenditure category. These are reporting requirements that Adams County has for all of our subrecipients. So Adams County specific, we have financial reports, which are due monthly on the 15th of each month. I know this is 10th. I apologize, this is an outdated slide. So due on the 15th of each month, that is across the board for all of our subrecipients. So your financial report is pretty straightforward. You let us know how much was charged to the grant in that reporting period, so in that month, and then attaching any supporting documentation or what we like to call proof of payment. So if we are doing personnel, they would be pay stubs, they might be checks if we don't do pay stubs. If we're doing rent, it might be a copy of the check given to the leasing agency, and then maybe a copy of the lease, of course, with everything redacted on it. So just as an example of what we might see. Next slide, please. Second to Adams County reporting requirements is quarterly programmatic activity reports. So these are due the month after the quarter end date. So that first quarter, January to March, it was due April 15th. The next one would be due July 15th. This is where we will ask all of those U.S. Treasury additional questions. This is also where you'll be able to tell us how your project is going, any new developments, any setbacks, an opportunity to really have a conversation about how the project itself is going. Next slide, please. And then finally, some additional narrative questions required of everybody, regardless of your expenditure category. So these questions our own team uses to report out to Treasury for our own quarterly report. So these are questions we ask of you and we need of you to be able to ourselves be in compliance, also located in the quarterly activity report. I know it makes it sound long, but it's well structured and it's easy to go through once you're onboarded and after you complete that first one. So hope I'm not scaring anybody away. Just want to make sure everyone is informed. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into the good stuff, like how do you actually apply? So Adams County, the ARPA team at least now has a solicitation page where we will post any grant opportunities. We're hoping that this is implemented countywide so that any department in the county, when they have a funding opportunity, a grant opportunity, it will live in the solicitation. Next slide, please. This is what the solicitation is going to look like. The link is right at the top. We can also put it in the chat. So the solicitation, like you can see here, some examples of our previous opportunities, using food security and then building some community-based organizations. If you click on that link now, you will only see co-responders since that is our only opportunity at the moment. So you'll click on that link. It'll take you to this solicitation. Next slide, please. Once you click on the co-responders line, you will be taken to the specific information for this opportunity. You have 5 different tabs here. Your overview tells you application start date, end date, any important information that we want you to know. eligibility. If there are any restrictions, it will go there. If there are any financial restrictions, including the max award amount available, will be in the financial tab. There are any questions, if you run into any trouble and want to reach out to Adams County staff, you would find that information in the contact tab. And then the most important tab here is the files tab. There are some documents for this opportunity and for most Adams County grant opportunities that will require you to download a budget, a risk assessment, a key driver, and then re-upload those with the application itself. And you will find all of those things here in the files tab. We will definitely go over that a little bit later too. So when we are in the solicitation, when we've gone over and decided this is a good opportunity for us, we're going to click on that apply button. The apply button is going to take us, next slide please, to the eCivis portal. So eCivis is going to be where we apply, and it's going to be where we do all of our grant management once you are awarded. It'll take you here. It'll ask you to create an account, super basic, just like you would create an account in most places. First name, last name, your email, and your password. Next slide, please. When we click sign up, eCivis will send you a verification email. The email will look, next slide, please. Oh, sorry, one more back. Sorry about that. I have it open on two screens, the presentation and then my own, and it's make sure I'm on the right one. So once you do verify your email address, you'll have to click on the link on the email, and then it'll take you back into the portal. So if we go back one now, or one forward one now, I apologize. You'll see what that link looks like, what that email looks like. You'll have to click on confirm my account. And when you click on confirm my account, it'll take you to the eCivis portal once more. You'll get that little green notification. Thank you for confirming your email. Please log in using your new information. And then when you do that, you're going to click on portal login. It's never going to be a Grant Network login. If we click there, it'll give us an error message. So you always just want to be sure to click portal login instead of Grant Network login. Once you click portal login, we have to take a few steps back. We have to go back to that solicitation and click apply one more time for that application to show up on your portal. So if we miss this step and we register for an account, we'll go in there and it'll be blank, right? We won't see anything. And that will be because we missed going back here to click apply one more time. So we go back, we click apply, we download any of the files that we might need, like that risk assessment, the budget, and the key driver. And then once you click apply, like I said, it'll take you back to the portal, and it'll show up like this. So this is another place where I've seen applicants get stuck because it has you sign in twice. So you'll sign into the portal, and when you start working on the application, when you click apply, it'll have you sign in again. So it's the same login, those exact same credentials, and again, it'll be portal login, not eCivis login. And when you log in, click portal login. Next slide, please. So it'll look like this. I log in again, I put in my information again, and then I'll be able to access the application after I click login. Next slide, please. And then you'll be taken to this page. So they're going to let me back up a little bit. So because we have multiple opportunities open at any given time, if you're applying to multiple, there will be a profile for you. So if you apply for corresponders, you make a profile, later on you decide to apply for another opportunity, your profile will already be created and you won't have to do this step again. So if you already have a current award with us, this isn't something that you would have to do. So you would create your profile, enter in your basic information. And one thing to note here is that the email used to create your portal account must be used as your email in the profile. So again, if the email that you use to sign up to create your portal is different than the email here in the profile, the system won't talk to itself, and there might be a breakdown in when you go to submit your application. There might be a breakdown in won't grab any email. So we just want to make sure that it's the same across the board. So now that we've gone into that, we can go into the application. So we've gone into the profile, we've completed that. If you want to change anything, it would be in there. So if we scroll down, another weird place to get stuck here is there are two different scroll bars, the one on the outside and the one on the inside. To get to the application, if you're not already seeing it, scroll down on the inner scroll bar all the way down, and we will click on application process. Application process will open up the application for us, and we can go in and open it up, start working on it. We can save it as a draft, mark it as complete, or close. You do have to save as a draft. It won't automatically save for you as you work through it. So if it, so for example, if your internet crashes, if you're halfway through, it won't save. So I would definitely recommend saving as you go. Next slide, please. And then here are those files that we had talked about. So as you're going through the application, you'll get to a section that's for all of your uploads. So again, in the solicitation, in that files tab, we have everything attached that you will need to re-upload. So as an example, that budget template, you would download it here and then re-upload it in that attachment section of the application itself. If you have any trouble downloading or accessing or even re-uploading, feel free to reach out. The staff can help troubleshoot. Risk assessment and the Adams County key driver, all three things that we will absolutely need from you to process this application. Additionally, we've attached the application access in eService, so quick user guide on how to navigate, and then a guide for developing an effective key driver, and the behavioral health assessment blueprint action report that is referenced later on in the application. So we do recommend downloading all of these, not just the three that are absolutely required. Next slide, please. So now we've gone through, we've done our updates, our uploads, I apologize, we've answered all of our questions, and we submit. So we saw on that last test mark as complete. So we would have to do both, mark as complete, and then go back here and click submit. You do have to do both steps. When you submit, you will see the application status change to complete, and your option will only be to view, not edit. I believe this is a screenshot that got spliced, so I apologize for that. But look for that submit, look for the complete. Remember that you have to do it twice. Next slide, please. So again, to verify that it has been sent in, you'll see the green, this has been submitted, and the view instead of edit, which is what I was trying to say earlier. Next slide, please. So we saw a screen that looked similar to this when we first started the application. This is another place we'll be able to see, has the application been submitted and where is it in the process? So this will change to under review, and in the application budget and goals, which is on the very bottom of that portal application page, you'll also see that the total requested is under review. If you were to be awarded, that would change to your award amount. This is also where you can keep track of where you are in the process, whether it's been approved or denied, or if it's been sent back to draft for you to continue working on it. This is where you would see those statuses. Are there any questions about applying, accessing the solicitation, or maybe setting up an account? Or even if there's anything I have gone over too quickly and maybe want to go back to and see.
Do you have to be a co-responder program to apply for this grant, or can you be working closely with a co-responder program to apply for this grant? And this may be a better question for I know that we're going to have a Q&A after this, so I can wait until that happens.
Can go ahead and answer that now. Thank you, Nora. You do not have to be a co-responder specifically. You do have to be working closely with co-response programs and providing services that support co-response efforts. Does that help clarify?
Okay, that does help clarify. And is there a way, if you have somebody like a community partner to write a letter of support or do some type of advocating to
Yes.
support their efforts?
Yes, so within the application, there is a section that asks some questions about whether community partnerships are necessary to support this project, whatever project you're proposing, and asks specifically about partnerships or about supporting organizations. So that's an opportunity to kind of explain anything for the individual program that is completing the application. And then at the end of the application, there will be a space for folks to upload whatever miscellaneous documents you think might be helpful. So if you have letters of support from people, if you have, I think it asks for some financial statements, but things of that nature that aren't necessarily plugged into one of the slots in the application.
Okay, thank you, Fran. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions from folks right now? Okay. Thank you so much, Carla. I'm going to move us into a little bit more about funding priorities. So we've broken the funding priority categories up into 4 main overarching themes. So we have a desire to fund things that are either direct services, so direct costs for services, or temporary services and treatments necessary to stabilize a participant's condition. And then we also have program supports. We heard from y'all in the community of practice that this is something that's really important and needed. So we have a bucket for staff supports, case management, program personnel, engagement and outreach efforts. We heard a lot about paid internships and being able to support folks who are maybe working through a school journey to try to get a license or to work with one of these programs post-graduation. So I felt like that was important to include. We have program costs such as data collection tools, startup costs maybe for new programs, and program supports. And then finally, I don't want to say quite a catch-all category, but building capacity. So things like specialized trainings, technical assistance, language training for programs that might want to delve a little further into those areas. In the behavioral health blueprint for action that is linked on the application page, through a bunch of amazing work that Emma and Natalie did examining the state of behavioral health in Adams County, they came up with 5 different recommendations that you see here on this slide for ways to increase behavioral health services and supports in Adams County as a whole. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but these are the recommendations that you will see on the application. On the application, you'll be asked to choose one or more of these that you think fit with the work or the project that you're proposing. So it doesn't have to be any particular one, and it does not have to be more than one, but we do ask you to try to tailor your project to one of these recommendation areas. As you see at the bottom, there's this intended impact. So we have a broad statement. We'd really like to see co-responder programs and response teams in the county created or enhanced in order to divert adults, children, and youth experiencing mental health crises from law enforcement and high-need communities. And then within this statement, we would love to see more of the specific impacts that your program hopes to accomplish, kind of relating back to these key recommendations. So the next couple of slides, we go a little more into depth about the specific funding priority categories that I just outlined, and then which recommendations on that blueprint for action each have the potential to address. And then on a couple of these, for example, the temporary services and treatments, we have some examples. I want to make it really clear as we are here that these are just examples of potential responses. Your proposal doesn't need to fit exactly into any of these. And we're not expecting that each proposal exactly hits each of these recommendations. These are just kind of broad categories to give you an idea of what we might be looking for. So for program supports, staff supports, we have this bucket here. So including but not limited to hiring additional personnel, hiring case managers, and staff supports. So this can be things like overtime costs for additional hours worked, which could also include, for example, coming to community of practice meetings, expanding coverage hours. We have community engagement and outreach efforts. So this could be things like education and outreach to support expanding program utilization. So getting the word out about these programs. That was something else that we heard from folks, that maybe there isn't as much community knowledge that these programs exist as, for example, like a Denver Star program has. And then, like I talked about before, the paid internships, licensure stipends, and staff incentives could fall under this category as well. In terms of program costs, we have data collection. So we'll talk in a little bit about the evaluation component of this notice of funding opportunity. But if you have additional data collection supports, this would be a great opportunity to put some of those in a proposal. There's startup costs for new programs, and then program supports. So that could include purchase of items intended to increase capability of programs to provide trauma-informed, culturally congruent, and/or linguistically congruent services. In terms of capacity building, we have the technical assistance mentioned before, specialized trainings or certifications. So this could be for co-responders, could be for case managers, could be for law enforcement personnel, whoever your program thinks could really benefit from some more specialized training or certification in areas that impact co-response. We also have language training here. So this could be tools, trainings, courses, technical assistance, language hotlines, etc., to better meet the linguistic needs of the communities that y'all serve. So we have here, this is a screenshot, kind of an example of what it, looks like in the application. So it will remind you of what these funding categories are, and then it will ask you which specific categories you are interested in proposing to address. Here we have kind of a breakdown. This is going to be 2 different slides. So these are the scoring criteria for the application. Again, not going to read this to you, but want to give y'all just a couple minutes to explore. So we have a problem statement here that will be worth 10 points total. Project overview and impact will be 20 points for this category. And then here you might see that additional points will be given for proposals that address more than one recommendation. So what we mean there, like I mentioned before, is that your proposal has to address at least one of those key recommendations that were made. If you answer this question completely, you select one recommendation, you'll be given full points for this. If your proposal addresses more than one recommendation, we'll give you 5 extra points per additional recommendation addressed by your proposal. We have here this capacity and sustainability piece. So we just want to know why your organization specifically is the one to respond to this challenge. We want to hear maybe some consideration of longer term funding, because we know these programs are newer. We know that funding comes from a variety of sources at this point. So would love to hear a little bit more about plans or desires for sustainability. We have a question here about participation in the co-responders community of practice. And I can get into a little bit later what specifically that commitment looks like. And then to your question before, Nora, letters of support from partner agencies is a really awesome place to put that into the application. The second bucket is, so we have a bucket for equity considerations. We're really curious about how the program serves or intends to serve populations of focus. Those are outlined too in the Behavioral Health Assessment Blueprint for Action, which is linked on the application or the solicitation page. If you'd like a little more information about that, but they are also listed here in the application. And then we're curious about how the proposed project aims to address the needs outlined in finding 2 of that assessment, which is the need for culturally, linguistically congruent care and behavioral health care that is tailored to the needs of communities specifically. Second to last bucket, we have project implementation. So we will ask you to upload a key driver sheet that just kind of outlines the key performance indicators that you hope to be mapping and following throughout your project, how you plan to engage with those and collect data on those. And so that will be here in the project implementation. And then finally, we have a budget. So we have a spreadsheet template for you for the budget. And then we just want a super brief narrative of why you are proposing the costs that you're proposing and how those would be helpful to you. Now I'll move into more of the FAQ section. So we have a couple of questions, frequently asked questions here. that we're going to go over. And then once we're done with this, we'll give you all a chance to ask any questions that you may have left over. So this slide is just kind of a timeline. We launched the application on May 15th, so last Wednesday, and this application will be open through June 16th. That virtual information session is this today. It is being recorded, so we'll send out the recording to all of you in case you want a reference point for a lot of the really awesome application-related information Carla went over. We will have proposal scoring by June 26th. And then once we have that scoring and recommendations, that will have to go to our Board of County Commissioners. So they'll take about a month. We are expecting award decision notifications the week of July 22nd for an award ceremony on August 6th, and then kickoff meetings around August 22nd. This last piece here is just a reminder that all funds will have to be spent by December 31st of 2026. And frankly, I do not remember if this is included in the presentation, but you do not have to propose funding that extends this entire amount of time. If you want to propose shorter term funding, you can. The absolute deadline for when that funding has to be spent is this December 31st, 2026 deadline. I will hand it back to Carla for this more technical bit because this is not my area of expertise, and then I will pop back in once she is done.
Thank you, Fran. So as a reminder, this is a federal grant, and so we must follow the 2 CFR Part 200 established uniform administrative requirements, their cost principles, their audit requirements for federal awards to non-federal entities. So which would be us to you as a subrecipient. We get asked frequently if a SAM.gov registration is required. So the SAM.gov registration is your unique entity identifier number, and we do. So the county can't enter into an agreement with a subrecipient or provide payment on that award until we have a SAM.gov registration or a UEI number that is not expired. If you don't already have one, I would suggest going in and requesting it through SAM.gov. It is a fairly quick process. I would say maybe about a week or 2 weeks for you to be issued that number. Will this federal grant recognize federally negotiated indirect costs? Yes, 10% or a federally negotiated rate. We would just need documentation showing that federally negotiated rate if it is not the 10%. Another question we often get is about the program evaluation. So an external program evaluation provider, we hope will help to assess the effects of the program and outcomes, support corresponder programs to quantify met and unmet needs. I won't read it all the way through, but the external program evaluation would be an outside provider or entity coming in to evaluate the effectiveness of the program individually and the corresponder program as a whole. Another question that we frequently get is about payments. So we do upfront payments, usually in 1/3 chunks. So we don't work off of reimbursements. It's just those 1/3 payments. You will receive the first payment as soon as the contract is executed, and the second and third payments once that first chunk has been spent. Are there any questions about the reporting requirements, about payments, or anything that might fall within that?
Can I get a little more information about the scope of like, is this over the period of 2 years or is there like a time frame specifically for this grant, or is it just starting in that August date and continuing up to the 2026 timeline?
So you can kind of choose your own adventure with what you want the funding to look
Okay.
like. The intention is that once awards are given, you will receive these first payments at that August date. So that will be kickoff meeting for everybody. If you want to propose funding that lasts through December 31st of 2026, regardless of what that's for, that's awesome. If you say we really just need some gap funding for this particular program, or we have something coming in later, but we really just want to pay for 1 year of this particular software or something, that's totally fine too. It does not need to last that whole year. So if you want to say we're going to start our spending on October 1st of this year, and then we'll go through October 1st of next year, that's totally fine. Does that help, Nora?
Yes, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions at this point? I was realizing as Carla was going over this, I was supposed to swap a couple bullet points on these slides. So I'm going to pop in really quickly and just talk about this external program evaluation piece. Our intention with that is we really don't want it to be onerous for y'all. We want to have a third-party evaluator come in and support you. We're not trying to add a bunch of extra things to your plates. We want this person to be somebody that really interfaces with your team, takes stuff off your plate, and enables you to generate maybe more data and more meaningful data than you could otherwise. Part of our desire with this is that the data that is generated from this evaluation could be used, for example, to make a case for more sustainable funding. We really want to show the impact of these programs. And so our hope is that this third-party evaluator will help do that without adding more burden of more data collection to y'all. I just wanted to cover that really quickly. And if there are no more questions, I will move on to the next slide. Okay, hearing none. So Carla, do you want to answer these or I can chat about the first couple?
Yeah, I can come in. So one thing we wanted to know is with our various funding opportunities, some of them have different restrictions. So want to make clear that FTEs, that your personnel are eligible for this funding opportunity. There aren't any specific restrictions that aren't already covered by the CFR 200 guidance. Can you apply if your organization or services are outside of Adams County? You can, but the ARPA dollars awarded to you have to be used for Adams County residents. So as an example, if we're doing personnel and they are outside of Adams County, but they do 30% of their work for Adams County residents, then we can bill 30% of their salary to that ARPA grant. Currently, we are using eCivis as our grant management system. We will send out training videos, some recordings, and if awarded, you will have a grant compliance specialist assigned to you that will, process your reports, but also be able to walk you through how to use the system, how to work through your grant from beginning to end as well. How long is the grant period and will there be a reapplication for the initial use of these funds? So as Fred has already mentioned, the absolute deadline to use all funds is December 31st of 26. This is the federal deadline for all ARPA funds, unfortunately. And there currently is not a reapplication for the initial use of these funds. Next question, would providing facility upgrades or purchasing program supplies, marked vehicles transport be allowable given funding restrictions? And the answer to that one is yes.
All right, so this is our last FAQ slide. So I'm going to go over these really quickly and then we'll have time for any other questions that we may not have gotten to through this. So the first one is around commitment to participating in the Adams County Co-Responders Community of Practice. I know a lot of y'all are already there. So what we would ask for this particular piece is attending and participating in at least 4 of the 6 meetings. So those happen every other month. They're on Thursdays. They are in person, but we're going to also start offering a virtual option because we know that y'all are super busy, a lot of moving pieces and parts. We would love to have you in person. We'll keep bringing snacks, but if virtual is what suits you best, that's totally fine. If there's a need to revisit the day and time in the future, if conflicts or something to that nature comes up, we will chat with y'all about it. So the next question, does our project have to be fully sustainable by the end of the grant term to be considered for full funding? I know that was something that came up in the scoring criteria. And the answer is no. So we will not be scoring the question of whether your organization can be sustainable by the end of the grant term. We do want to know about your plans for long-term funding and sustainability, but we will not base our funding decisions on your ability to support sustainably by the end of that 2026 term. Second to last question. Can we explain how proposals will be weighted based on the recommendations they address? So I chatted a little bit about this earlier, but the organizations that select one recommendation and clearly explain how their proposal addresses that recommendation will receive a full 10 points for that answer. An extra 5 points will be given for each additional recommendation addressed by the proposal. So in your narrative and in your key drivers, just ask that you indicate which proposals or which recommendations that your proposal will address and kind of provide an explanation for each of those. And for each additional address recommendation, we'll give you those extra 5 points. And the last question is around assistance available to support creation of key drivers and key performance indicators. So we will be partnering with the Rocky Mountain Partnership. They will be able to provide technical assistance with key drivers and the associated templates for that. So we should have some contact information coming to y'all soon for folks who you can reach out to for support with that. In the meantime, I am happy to answer any and all questions related to technical assistance and key drivers. And I think that takes us to questions. So anything else coming up for folks during this time? Anything folks are hoping to have addressed before the end of this session?
Fran, I can ask a question. So I know I got an email response, but other people might be interested in this question, which was, will you guys be doing partial awards? So if you cannot address the entire application, will you do partial? And the answer was yes. Can you explain that a little bit, or is that just as simple as it is?
I think, and Emma, Natalie, feel free to jump in if you have different thoughts. So you're correct. We will be offering partial awards if the grant cannot meet all of the proposed costs laid out in the proposal. So what this looks like, I think, will kind of depend proposal to proposal. We don't know what kind of proposals we're going to get, and there are certain things that, for example, might be, trying to think of a way to say this. There are certain things that folks don't really like to fund. And so it's not from like a moral perspective, but more from and I'm just going to be really honest here, like, are you asking for another 10% for your executive director? That sort of thing is a slightly harder sell than costs that are more programmatic costs or costs that go directly towards supporting community.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And I might jump in as well. This is where our scoring criteria really comes into play. So we'll be, looking at those overall scores and the evaluation that comes through our scoring committee. And if we have more proposals than we have money to fill, we'll be using that scoring criteria to also help us make prioritization around what we can fund. So it's a great opportunity. We have $1.4 million to award, but that can go pretty quickly depending on what folks are proposing. So, if we can fund part of the program, but not all, we will certainly have those conversations.
And to that point, if everyone here comes in and says we have a great $15,000 proposal, we're probably not gonna nickel and dime folks on that. Like, we'll be able to support those. It just kind of depends on what is being proposed and how much money we have to allocate to particular projects.
Is there a minimum or a maximum request for funding?
So our minimum request is $10,000 and the maximum we have right now is $500,000.
And Fran, if I could just add really quickly to the partial award question, I think I just want to make it clear for folks that we are asking that question in the application. So you'll see that question be asked yes or no. And really the intent is, please tell us yes if you do need the full awards and tell us why through your application process. I think Emma definitely hit the note in terms of the scoring criteria that you all can see at a high level what points are being allotted where and what that weighting is looking like. So I think, and Fran might have alluded to it earlier, but I think we really see that the requirement is addressing at least one of the recommendations. A stronger proposal might look like addressing more than one of the recommendations, and a full award might look like how that is addressing more than one recommendation. So anyway, just some tidbits to keep in mind and really just making it clear that if the answer is yes, then we accept that and we want to know that when we're scoring. And if the answer is no, then we also want to know that as well, so we can consider partial awards. So I'll pause there. That want to make that clear.
Sarah? Anything else?
If folks are thinking of questions, I wanted to just call your attention to something I put into the chat. So we do also have an open RFA, request for applications for the co-responder evaluation contract. And so that's also available for folks who may be interested in that work. And so if you have people that you work with or that you know who do evaluation, feel free to share that information as well or send them our way, and we'd be happy to talk to them about that process as well. The intent is to really have that vendor up and running at the beginning of the award or contract start, so that they can be working with you all from the beginning of the grant award.
Anything else coming up for folks?
If there's no further questions today, but you think of some later, please email us, let us know. So Fran is a programmatic contact. Carla is also a contact there for you. They're listed on the solicitation. So definitely send your questions along. We'll continue to kind of collate the questions that are answered and make sure that those are shared out as well. But we appreciate
I want to make sure that
spending time with
information
us
one
today.
person is getting, everyone has.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. Well, looks like we're good to go, huh?
Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. Take care.